In the vast expanse of space where stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across an endless black canvas, Earth had always been a quiet little planet. It was small, blue, and seemingly insignificant compared to the mighty civilizations that roamed the galaxy. For centuries, alien races paid no attention to this tiny speck of life. They thought humans were nothing more than primitive creatures still learning how to harness fire, let alone advanced technology. But what these aliens didn't know was that humanity wasn't just about survival, it was about innovation. And one fateful day, humanity would prove just how dangerous it could be when pushed too far. It all started on a perfectly ordinary afternoon. The sun shone brightly in the sky, children played in parks, cars honked in traffic jams, and people went about their daily lives without any clue that something extraordinary was about to happen. Then, out of nowhere, strange lights began flickering above. At first, many assumed it was some kind of atmospheric disturbance, perhaps lightning, or even a rare celestial event. Some took pictures with their phones thinking it might make for a cool post on social media. Others simply shrugged it off as another unexplained mystery of nature. But then came the sound, a deep, rumbling crack that echoed through the skies as if the heavens themselves were splitting apart. People froze in place, staring upward in awe and terror. The sky seemed to tear open, revealing massive shapes looming overhead. These weren't natural phenomena. They were ships, gigantic, otherworldly vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Each ship looked like a floating fortress, bristling with weapons and glowing with eerie energy. It was clear. Earth was under invasion. Panic spread, faster than wildfire. Cities erupted into chaos as people ran for cover, unsure of what to do or where to go. Governments scrambled to respond, activating emergency protocols and issuing statements urging calm. News channels around the world broadcast live footage of the alien fleet hovering ominously above major cities. Experts debated whether this was the end of humanity, while conspiracy theorists claimed it was proof of ancient prophecies coming true. Amidst the confusion, one thing became painfully obvious. Humanity was hopelessly outmatched. The invaders, who called themselves the Xylothians, wasted no time in making their intentions known. Through a global broadcast transmitted directly into every device on the planet, they delivered their ultimatum. A cold, emotionless voice boomed across the airwaves. "We are the Xylothian Empire. Your planet harbors resources vital to our survival. Surrender them willingly, or face annihilation." There was no room for negotiation, no offer of peace talks, just a stark choice between submission and destruction. For a moment, it felt like humanity's fate was sealed. How could Earth possibly stand against such overwhelming odds? The Xylothians' ships were impossibly large, their technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Their weapons glowed with an unnatural light, capable of reducing entire cities to ash in seconds. To the aliens, humanity must have seemed like ants beneath their boots, insignificant and powerless. But what the Xylothians failed to realize was that humanity had spent decades preparing for this very moment. Hidden beneath layers of secrecy, governments around the world had been quietly building their own fleet of starships. What appeared to be defense satellites orbiting Earth were actually prototypes of advanced spacecraft designed specifically for interstellar combat. Deep space exploration missions had secretly doubled as reconnaissance operations, gathering data on alien civilizations and reverse engineering their technology. Humanity may have been caught off guard, but it wasn't unprepared. As the Xylothians continued their ominous display of power, something incredible happened. From the cracks in the sky emerged another set of ships, not alien, but unmistakably human-made. Sleek and metallic, these vessels gleamed with cutting-edge design and sophistication. They were smaller than the Xylothian behemoths, but they radiated a sense of lethal precision. Weapons systems powered up, shields shimmered into existence, and engines roared to life as the human fleet took position alongside the invaders. The sight stunned both the Xylothians and the people of Earth. For years, humanity's leaders had kept this project classified, fearing that revealing their capabilities prematurely could provoke an attack. Now, with the enemy already here, there was no reason to hold back. As the human ships formed a defensive perimeter around the planet, a collective gasp rippled through the global audience watching the unfolding drama. Could it be possible? Was humanity actually ready to fight back? The answer came swiftly. Without warning, the lead human vessel fired the first shot, a bolt of pure energy that streaked through the void and struck one of the Xylothian cruisers. The impact sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, catching them completely off guard. Before they could react, the rest of the human ships followed suit, unleashing a barrage of plasma cannons and laser beams. Explosions lit up the sky as Xylothian vessels crumbled under the unexpected assault. What made the human attack so effective wasn't just brute force, it was strategy. Every move had been meticulously planned by military tacticians working hand in hand with scientists and engineers. Drones swarmed the battlefield, targeting weak points in the enemy's armor and disabling critical systems. Advanced algorithms predicted the Xylothians' next maneuvers, allowing human pilots to anticipate and counter them with uncanny accuracy. Even civilians watching from below couldn't help but marvel at the precision and coordination displayed by their defenders. On the ground, reactions varied wildly. Some cheered wildly, waving flags and chanting patriotic slogans. Others prayed fervently, hoping this miraculous resistance would turn the tide. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Reach on, humanity fights back and on Earth will prevail," as millions shared videos and images of the ongoing battle. For the first time in recorded history, humanity stood united, not divided by borders or ideologies, but bound together by a common purpose: survival. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Aegis Dawn, Commander Sarah Chen watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and determination. She had dedicated her life to defending Earth, and now she saw her efforts paying off. Her crew worked tirelessly, relaying orders and analyzing data as the fight raged on. "They underestimated us," she muttered under her breath, her eyes narrowing as she studied the holographic display of the battlefield. Big mistake. Indeed, the Xylothians had severely miscalculated. In their arrogance, they had assumed humanity would cower in fear and surrender without a fight. What they hadn't accounted for was the indomitable spirit of the human race. The same spirit that had driven explorers to cross oceans, inventors to create wonders, and dreamers to reach for the stars. Now that spirit burned brighter than ever, fueled by desperation and defiance. As the initial wave of attacks subsided, the human fleet regrouped, assessing the damage dealt to the enemy. Several Xylothian ships had been destroyed, their wreckage drifting silently in orbit. Others retreated, damaged, but not yet defeated. Though the battle was far from over, one thing was certain: humanity had drawn first blood. The invaders had come expecting an easy victory, but instead they found themselves facing an opponent unlike any they had encountered before. For the people of Earth, the message was loud and clear. This was no longer a story of victimhood. It was a tale of resilience, ingenuity, and sheer willpower. The Xylothians had made a grave error in choosing Earth as their target, and as the human fleet prepared for the next phase of the battle, the world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. With the first wave of attacks having caught the Xylothians off guard, humanity found itself in a position it had never imagined, not just defending Earth, but taking the fight to the invaders. The initial victory was exhilarating, but it was also sobering. Everyone knew that this was only the beginning. The Xylothians were far from defeated, and their massive fleet still outnumbered humanity's hastily assembled armada. Yet, for the first time in history, the people of Earth felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't helpless prey anymore, they were hunters. The aftermath of the opening battle left both sides reeling. On Earth, news outlets buzzed with updates as reporters scrambled to make sense of what had just happened. Footage of the human fleet firing back at the Xylothians went viral, sparking celebrations in cities around the globe. Fireworks lit up the night skies in some countries, while others held vigils for those who had already lost their lives. Social media was flooded with messages of pride, defiance, and unity. Hashtags like Charring Earth Rises and Humanity Prevails trended worldwide, uniting billions under a single banner. For once, humanity wasn't divided by borders, languages, or beliefs. It was one team fighting for survival. But amidst the jubilation, there was also fear. The Xylothians were still out there, regrouping and plotting their next move. Their ships were larger, their numbers greater, and their technology more advanced. Humanity's early success had been impressive, but everyone knew it wouldn't last unless they adapted quickly. Military leaders convened emergency meetings, strategizing how to counter the inevitable counterattack. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged ships and upgrade weapons systems. Scientists analyzed data from the battle, searching for weaknesses in the Xylothian defenses. Every second counted, because the next clash could decide the fate of the planet. On board the Aegis Dawn, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the holographic display of the battlefield. The adrenaline rush from the first engagement had faded. Replaced by grim determination, she knew that the Xylothians wouldn't retreat without a fight. "They're arrogant," she said aloud, addressing her crew. "And arrogance makes you predictable. We hit them hard where they least expect it. That's our advantage." Her words resonated with the team. Each member of the crew understood the stakes. This wasn't just about protecting Earth. It was about proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with any adversary, no matter how powerful. The mood on board was tense but focused. Pilots double-checked their flight paths, technicians fine-tuned weapon calibrations, and analysts pored over intelligence reports. Every detail mattered. Every decision carried weight. Failure wasn't an option. Meanwhile, deep within the Xylothian ranks, shock turned into anger. The invaders had assumed humanity would crumble under pressure, surrendering its resources without resistance. Instead, they faced a coordinated and relentless assault that left several of their ships in ruins. Admiral Vrax, the leader of the Xylothian fleet, seethed with rage. To him, this was more than an insult. It was a threat to his reputation and authority. He couldn't afford to lose face in front of his superiors or the rest of the Empire. His response was swift and brutal. He ordered all remaining ships to prepare for a full-scale assault on Earth. The Xylothians' plan was simple, yet devastating. They would unleash their most powerful weapons, a barrage of energy beams designed to obliterate entire cities in seconds. At the same time, they deployed swarms of smaller fighter craft to overwhelm the human fleet. Their goal was clear: crush humanity's morale and force them into submission. What they didn't realize, however, was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Human engineers had spent years reverse engineering alien technology recovered from past encounters. One breakthrough came in the form of adaptive shielding, energy barriers capable of adjusting to incoming attacks in real time. Another innovation was the development of EMP, electromagnetic pulse missiles, which could disable enemy electronics temporarily. These advancements gave humanity a fighting chance against the superior firepower of the Xylothians. As the second wave of the battle began, the sky above Earth transformed into a chaotic light show. Xylothian beams rained down, striking cities and military installations. Explosions tore through buildings, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Civilians scrambled for shelter, praying for the nightmare to end. But high above the chaos, the human fleet fought valiantly to hold the line. Captain Marcus Kane, a decorated pilot known for his daring maneuvers, led a squadron of fighters directly into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship, the Swordfish, darted between the larger Xylothian vessels, dodging fire while unleashing salvos of plasma torpedoes. Behind him, other pilots followed suit, weaving through the battlefield with precision and skill. Together, they targeted the weaker points of the enemy ships, the engines, weapon arrays, and command centers. Back on the Aegis Dawn, Commander Chen coordinated the operation, her voice steady over the comms. "Kane, focus on the lead cruiser. Disable its shields," she ordered. Within moments, the Swordfish unleashed a concentrated volley of EMP missiles, causing the cruiser's defenses to flicker and fail. Seizing the opportunity, a group of human bombers moved in, delivering a devastating payload that crippled the vessel. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the massive ship listed sideways, flames erupting from its hull. But the Xylothians weren't done yet. Realizing they were losing ground, they unleashed their ace in the hole, a colossal dreadnought armed with a planet-destroying cannon. The weapon charged ominously, its core glowing brighter with each passing second. If fired, it would reduce entire continents to ash. Panic rippled through the human fleet as commanders scrambled to come up with a solution. It was Lieutenant Elena Zhao, a young physicist stationed aboard the Aegis Dawn, who proposed a daring plan. Using quantum entanglement principles, she theorized that they could create a feedback loop within the dreadnought's power core, destabilizing it and causing it to self-destruct. The catch? They needed to synchronize multiple particle beams from different angles simultaneously, a task requiring pinpoint accuracy and perfect timing. Commander Chen didn't hesitate. "Do it," she said firmly. Teams sprang into action, recalibrating weapons systems and positioning ships for the attack. As the dreadnought prepared to fire, the human fleet executed the plan flawlessly. Particle beams lanced through space, converging on the dreadnought's core. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, with a blinding flash, the dreadnought imploded, its destruction sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The loss of their flagship sent the Xylothians into disarray. Ships broke formation, retreating in confusion as the human fleet pressed its advantage. Pilots cheered, soldiers celebrated, and civilians watching from below erupted into cheers. Humanity had struck another blow, and this time, it felt like more than just a temporary reprieve. It felt like momentum. Yet, even as the dust settled, Commander Chen remained cautious. She knew the Xylothians wouldn't give up so easily. Reinforcements were likely en route, and Earth's defenses were stretched thin. Still, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had proven something today, not just to the invaders, but to itself. When pushed to the brink, humans didn't break. They adapted. They fought. And most importantly, they refused to surrender. For the first time in history, Earth stood tall among the stars, ready to defend itself against whatever challenges lay ahead. The message was clear. Messing with humanity came at a price. And as the battle subsided, the world united behind a single rallying cry. This is what happens when you mess with humans. With the destruction of the Xylothian dreadnought, humanity had achieved a monumental victory. The invaders' fleet was in disarray, retreating to regroup and reassess their strategy. For the people of Earth, it was a moment of triumph, a rare glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. Fireworks lit up the skies in celebration, and news anchors spoke of resilience and unity. Yet deep within military command centers and aboard starships like the Aegis Dawn, leaders knew better than to let their guard down. This war was far from over. The Xylothians were wounded, but they weren't defeated, and history had taught humanity one thing: when cornered, even the most arrogant enemies could become desperate, and desperation bred danger. Admiral Vrax, the leader of the Xylothian fleet, was furious. His once proud armada had been humiliated by what he considered an inferior species. The loss of the dreadnought wasn't just a tactical failure, it was a blow to his pride. To make matters worse, reports confirmed that reinforcements wouldn't arrive for several weeks due to logistical delays. By then, Earth's defenses might grow even stronger. Vrax couldn't afford to wait. He needed a decisive strike, one that would crush humanity's spirit and force them to surrender unconditionally. After hours of deliberation with his commanders, Vrax devised a bold plan. Using the remaining ships, he would launch a simultaneous assault on multiple fronts. Some vessels would target key cities and military installations on Earth, while others would focus on crippling the human fleet. But the centerpiece of his strategy was a weapon so devastating that even mentioning its name sent shivers down the spines of his subordinates: the Void Generator. This monstrous device had the power to create artificial black holes, sucking entire planets into oblivion. If deployed near Earth, it could tear the planet apart, leaving nothing but debris floating in space. Vrax ordered the Void Generator to be installed on the largest surviving cruiser in his fleet, the Zixarian. Its deployment would mark the final act of this invasion, or so he believed. With grim determination, the Xylothian forces prepared for their counterattack, unaware that humanity had plans of its own. Back on Earth, intelligence operatives worked tirelessly to piece together clues about the Xylothians' next move. Intercepted transmissions hinted at something big, a weapon capable of catastrophic destruction. Scientists and engineers convened emergency meetings to analyze the data. It didn't take long for them to realize the horrifying truth. The Xylothians were planning to use a black hole generator against Earth. Dr. Elena Zhao, the young physicist who had helped destroy the dreadnought, was called into a top-secret briefing aboard the Aegis Dawn. Commander Sarah Chen explained the situation, her tone grim but resolute. "We can't let them deploy that weapon," she said. "If we do, it's game over." Elena nodded, already thinking through possible solutions. "The good news is, we've dealt with similar tech before," she replied. "During previous encounters with alien artifacts, humans had developed tools capable of disrupting gravitational anomalies. These devices, though experimental, might provide a way to neutralize the void generator, if they could get close enough to use them." Commander Chen wasted no time. She assembled a team of elite pilots, engineers, and scientists, tasking them with devising a daring mission to infiltrate the Xylothian fleet and disable the void generator. At the center of this operation was Captain Marcus Kane, whose bravery and skill had earned him a reputation as one of humanity's finest warriors. Together they formulated a plan codenamed Operation Eclipse, a high-risk, high-reward mission that involved sneaking stealth cruisers into the heart of the enemy fleet, planting explosives on the void generator, and escaping before it detonated. Bia. Operation began under the cover of darkness, or as close to darkness as space allowed. Modified stealth cruisers equipped with cloaking technology reverse-engineered from alien designs slipped silently through the void. Piloted by hand-picked crews, these ships carried everything needed for the mission: EMP charges, portable graviton, inhibitors, and enough firepower to defend themselves if discovered. Leading the charge was Captain Kane, piloting the Spectre, a sleek vessel designed specifically for covert operations. As the stealth cruisers approached the Xylothian fleet, tension ran high. Every crew member held their breath, knowing that detection meant certain death. The Xylothian sensors were advanced, and even the slightest mistake could give away their position. But luck and careful planning was on their side. The cruisers maneuvered between larger ships, staying just out of range of patrol drones and automated turrets. Slowly but surely, they closed in on the Zixarian, the massive cruiser housing the void generator. Inside the Spectre's captain, Kane monitored the ship's systems, his hand steady on the controls. Beside him, Lieutenant Elena Zhao worked furiously to recalibrate the graviton inhibitors, ensuring they would work against the black hole generator. "We're almost there," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Outside the viewport, the Zixarian loomed like a mechanical titan, its surface bristling with weapons and glowing conduits. Finally, the stealth cruisers reached their destination. Teams of engineers disembarked, using magnetic boots to cling to the hull of the Zixarian. They moved quickly, planting explosives along critical points of the ship's structure. Meanwhile, Elena and her team worked to disable the void generator itself, carefully attaching the graviton inhibitors to its core. Time was running out. The Xylothians were bound to notice something amiss soon. And then, disaster struck. An alert blared across the comms. The team had been spotted. Xylothian patrols swarmed toward the Zixarian, firing energy beams and deploying boarding parties. The engineers scrambled to finish their work, knowing that every second counted. Inside the Spectre, Captain Kane prepared for a desperate escape, ready to fight his way out if necessary. Detonation sequence initiated. Helena shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. The countdown began, ticking down from 30 seconds. The engineers detached from the hull and sprinted back to their cruisers, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. As the last crew member boarded the Spectre, Captain Kane gunned the engines, weaving through a hailstorm of laser blasts. Behind them, The Zixarian erupted in a brilliant explosion, its void generator destabilized by the graviton inhibitors. The resulting shockwave tore through the Xylothian fleet, disabling dozens of ships and sending the rest into chaos. Cheers erupted aboard the human vessels as they made their escape, the mission a success. But the cost had been high. Several stealth cruisers hadn't made it back and countless lives had been lost. Despite the losses, Operation Eclipse marked a turning point in the war. Without the void generator, the Xylothians' ability to threaten Earth directly was severely diminished. Their fleet, already battered from earlier battles, struggled to maintain cohesion. For the first time, humanity held the upper hand. On board the Aegis Dawn, Commander Chen addressed her crew, her voice filled with equal parts pride and sorrow. Today, we prove that no matter how powerful our enemies are, we will never back down. We will never surrender, and we will always find a way to protect our home. Her words resonated deeply, not just with her crew, but with billions watching from below. For the Xylothians, the message was equally clear. Humanity was not a foe to be underestimated. What had started as a routine resource raid had spiraled into a nightmare. Now, with their forces in shambles and their ultimate weapon destroyed, the invaders faced a choice: retreat or face total annihilation. As the dust settled, Earth stood tall, its defenders battered but unbroken. The galaxy now knew the truth. Messing with humanity came at a price, and as the battle subsided, the world united behind a single rallying cry. This is what happens when you mess with humans. The destruction of the Zixarian and its void generator marked a critical turning point in humanity's war against the Xylothians. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's defenders held the upper hand. The invaders' fleet was, in disarray, their most devastating weapon reduced to cosmic debris, and their morale shattered. Yet even as celebrations erupted across the globe, military leaders understood that the fight was far from over. The Xylothians still had reinforcements en route, and their empire stretched across countless star systems. If humanity wanted to secure its future, it couldn't afford to wait for the next attack. It needed to strike back. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. Her sharp eyes traced the scattered remnants of the Xylothian fleet retreating into deep space. Though victorious, she felt no sense of triumph, only urgency. "They'll regroup," she said aloud, addressing her senior officers. "And when they do, they'll come back stronger. We can't let that happen." Her words resonated with everyone present. Humanity had proven it could defend itself, but defense alone wouldn't win this war. To truly end the threat, they needed to take the fight directly to the Xylothians, to hit them where it hurt most, their homeworld. It was a bold idea, almost reckless, but one that carried undeniable logic. By crippling the Xylothian Empire at its core, humanity could force a surrender or, failing that, dismantle their ability to wage war altogether. The plan, however, was fraught with challenges. The Xylothian capital lay light years away, hidden behind layers of heavily fortified outposts and patrol routes. Even reaching it would require navigating through hostile territory undetected. Then there was the matter of resources. Earth's fleet was already stretched thin after weeks of relentless combat. Every ship, every pilot, every ounce of fuel was precious. Launching an offensive campaign of this scale risked everything. Yet despite the risks, Commander Chen knew it was the only viable option. She turned to Captain Marcus Kane, who had led the daring mission to destroy the void generator. "Kane," she said firmly, "I need your best people for this. Volunteers only. No guarantees we'll all make it back." Kane nodded without hesitation. He'd seen too much death, too much destruction, to turn away now. "You'll have them," he replied, his voice steady. "We've come too far to stop fighting." Within hours, preparations began for what would become known as Operation Shadow Strike. The mission called for a small, elite team of stealth cruisers modified to evade detection by Xylothian sensors. These ships would carry demolition experts, engineers, and intelligence operatives, tasked with infiltrating the heart of the Xylothian Empire, and disabling their central command hub, a towering structure suspended in orbit around the dying star that powered the Empire. Lieutenant Elena Zhao played a crucial role in preparing the team. Drawing on her expertise in quantum mechanics and alien technology, she developed specialized EMP devices capable of disrupting the command hub's power grid. "If we can knock out their communications network," she explained during a briefing, "it'll cripple their entire military infrastructure. Without centralized leadership, their forces will collapse." The team also included veteran pilots like Lieutenant Ava Patel, whose precision flying skills had saved countless lives during previous battles. Each member brought something unique to the table, united by a shared determination to protect Earth at any cost. As the ships were prepped and supplies loaded, volunteers poured in from across the fleet. Some were seasoned veterans, others were rookies eager to prove themselves. Many left behind families, friends, and loved ones, knowing full well they might never return. But none hesitated. This was more than duty. It was survival. The journey to the Xylothian homeworld was perilous, filled with narrow escapes and close calls. From the moment they entered enemy territory, the crew of Operation Shadow Strike operated under constant threat of discovery. Stealth cruisers hugged the edges of asteroid fields, using natural cover to mask their movements. Pilots held their breath as patrols passed dangerously close, their sensors scanning for intruders. Even the slightest miscalculation could spell disaster. At one point, the convoy encountered a massive Xylothian supply depot guarded by automated turrets. Rather than risk detection, Captain Kane devised a diversion. Using decoy drones, he lured the turrets into firing on empty space while the cruisers slipped past unnoticed. It was a risky maneuver, but it worked. As the team emerged on the other side, cheers erupted over the comms channel, but they quickly silenced themselves, aware that the hardest part was yet to come. Days turned into weeks as the ships pushed deeper into enemy territory. Morale wavered at times, especially when food rations ran low or engine malfunctions threatened to delay their progress. But the crew drew strength from each other, sharing stories, jokes, and memories of home. They reminded themselves why they were here. Not just to survive, but to ensure that humanity would never again be vulnerable to such threats. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the team reached their destination. Through the viewports of their ships, they gazed upon the Xylothian capital, a glittering metropolis suspended in orbit around a dying red giant. Towering spires made of dark metal jutted outward like claws, glowing faintly with pulsating energy. At the center of the structure was the command hub, a monolithic dome bristling with antennas and shield generators. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a symbol of the Xylothians' dominance. Infiltrating the command hub required split-second timing and flawless execution. The team split into two groups, one tasked with planting explosives on key structural points and the other responsible for deploying the EMP devices inside the facility. Captain Kane led the infiltration squad, guiding his ship through a maze of defensive satellites and orbital mines. Once inside, the crew deployed magnetic boots and rappelled onto the surface of the hub, moving silently to avoid detection. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Engineers worked quickly to disable security systems while demolition experts planted charges along critical junctions. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Elena Zhao personally carried the EMP device to the main power core, her hands trembling slightly as she attached it to the console. "This is it," she whispered, activating the countdown timer. A soft beep signaled success, and she exhaled sharply, signaling the others to fall back. But just as the team prepared to evacuate, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Xylothians had discovered the breach. Reinforcements flooded the corridors, forcing the humans to fight their way out. Plasma rifles crackled as soldiers exchanged fire with alien troops, each shot echoing loudly in the confined space. Despite being outnumbered, the humans fought with ferocity born of desperation. Every step closer to the exit felt like a victory. Back aboard the Spectre, Captain Kane monitored the situation anxiously. When the last member of the infiltration team boarded, he wasted no time. With engines roaring, the stealth cruiser blasted off, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. Behind them, the command hub exploded in a dazzling display of light and energy, sending shockwaves rippling through the surrounding structures. As the team escaped into the void, they watched the chaos unfold below. Without their central command hub, the Xylothian forces dissolved into confusion. Ships drifted aimlessly, unable to coordinate attacks or respond to orders. It was a catastrophic blow, one that would take years, if not decades, to recover from. For the first time since the EE invasion began, humanity allowed itself to breathe. The galaxy now knew the truth. Earth was no longer a passive target. It was a force to be reckoned with. And as the survivors of Operation Shadow Strike returned home, they carried with them a message that echoed across stars. This is what happens when you mess with humans. The destruction of the Xylothian command hub marked the beginning of the end for their empire. Without centralized leadership, their vast military machine ground to a halt. Ships that once moved with precision now drifted aimlessly, their crews confused and demoralized. Communication networks collapsed, supply chains were severed, and morale plummeted. The once mighty Xylothian fleet, which had seemed unstoppable mere weeks ago, was now a shadow of its former self. For humanity, it was a moment of triumph, a hard-fought victory against an enemy that had underestimated them at every turn. As news of Operation Shadow Strike reached Earth, celebrations erupted across the planet. Cities lit up with fireworks, streets filled with cheering crowds, and social media buzzed with messages of pride and gratitude. Billboards displayed images of Captain Marcus Kane and his team, hailing them as heroes who had saved humanity from annihilation. In living rooms, schools, and workplaces, people shared stories of resilience and unity, marveling at how far they had come since the first day the sky cracked open. But amidst the jubilation, there was also reflection. The war had cost billions of lives, civilians caught in the crossfire, soldiers who gave everything to defend their home, and countless others whose worlds had been forever changed by the invasion. Entire cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and scars ran deep. Yet even in the face of such devastation, humanity found reasons to hope. This wasn't just a story of survival. It was a testament to ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a species determined to fight for its future. On board the Aegis Dawn, Commander Sarah Chen addressed her crew one final time before heading back to Earth. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of everything they had endured together. "We've done something incredible," she began, pausing to look each person in the eye. "Not just for ourselves, but for everyone on this planet. We've shown the universe that we're not afraid to stand up to anyone who tries to harm us." Her words resonated deeply with the crew. They had faced unimaginable odds, sacrificed so much, and pushed themselves beyond their limits. And while none of them would ever forget the horrors of war, they took solace in knowing that their efforts had made a difference. Humanity had proven itself capable of more than just surviving. It could thrive, adapt, and rise above adversity. Meanwhile, aboard the remnants of the Xylothian fleet, Admiral Vrax stared into the void, his expression unreadable. The loss of the command hub was catastrophic, not only for the war effort but for his reputation. To fail so spectacularly was unthinkable, especially for someone of his rank. As reports poured in about the chaos spreading throughout the Empire, he realized the truth. The humans had won. Their relentless determination, cunning strategies, and willingness to risk everything had turned the tide of the conflict. In a desperate attempt to salvage what remained of his forces, Vrax ordered a full retreat. What was left of the fleet limped away from Earth's orbit, disappearing into the depths of space. But even as they fled, the Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that this defeat would haunt him and his people for generations to come. The humans had taught them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Never underestimate your opponent. Back on Earth, governments convened an emergency summit to discuss the aftermath of the war. Leaders from around the globe gathered in Geneva, Switzerland, to assess the damage and plan for the future. It was clear that rebuilding would take years, if not decades. Infrastructure needed repair, Economies required stabilization and millions of displaced individuals sought refuge. Yet, despite these challenges, there was a sense of optimism in the air. For the first time in history, humanity stood united. Not divided by borders or ideologies, but bound together by a common purpose: survival. During the summit, a delegation of Xylothian emissaries arrived unexpectedly, seeking peace negotiations. Their tone was humble, almost apologetic, an astonishing contrast to the arrogance they had displayed during the invasion. Through interpreters, they expressed regret for their actions and offered reparations in exchange for a ceasefire. While many human leaders were skeptical, others saw an opportunity to forge a new path forward, one based on diplomacy rather than destruction. After days of intense deliberation, humanity agreed to negotiate, but only under strict conditions. The Xylothians would dismantle their remaining fleets near Earth, share advanced technology as part of reparations, and establish a formal treaty prohibiting further aggression. In return, humanity promised not to pursue retaliatory measures against the Xylothian Empire. It was a fragile truce, but one that held the promise of lasting peace. As life slowly returned to normal on Earth, humanity began looking toward the stars with renewed ambition. The war had revealed both vulnerabilities and strengths, prompting governments to invest heavily in space exploration and defense programs. Scientists worked tirelessly to reverse engineer captured Xylothian technology, unlocking secrets that could revolutionize energy production, medicine, and transportation. Engineers designed new generations of starships, faster and more powerful than ever before. And educators emphasized STEM fields, ensuring that future generations would inherit a legacy of innovation. At the same time, humanity recognized the importance of unity. International alliances strengthened, fostering collaboration between nations that had once been rivals. A global council was established to oversee interstellar affairs, ensuring that Earth spoke with a single voice when dealing with alien civilizations. Space stations orbiting the planet became hubs of research and diplomacy, welcoming representatives from other species eager to learn more about the humans who had defied all expectations. For Captain Marcus Kane and his team, life after the war was bittersweet. Though hailed as heroes, they carried the memories of those they had lost. Some struggled to adjust to civilian life, haunted by nightmares of battles fought and comrades fallen. Others threw themselves into work, channeling their grief into rebuilding efforts or mentoring young pilots preparing for careers in space defense. Despite their struggles, they remained symbols of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments humanity could find light. Lieutenant Elena Zhao continued her groundbreaking research, earning international acclaim for her contributions to quantum mechanics and alien tech integration. Her work paved the way for advancements that transformed industries worldwide. Meanwhile, Commander Sarah Chen retired from active duty, dedicating herself to teaching the next generation of military leaders. She often reminded her students of the lessons learned during the war. Preparation, adaptability, and teamwork were key to overcoming any challenge. Years later, humanity looked back on the Xylothian invasion as a turning point in its history. It had been a brutal, devastating chapter, but one that ultimately strengthened the resolve of an entire species. Earth was no longer a passive observer in the cosmos. It was a player, a force to be reckoned with. Alien civilizations that had once dismissed humanity now approached with caution and respect. Trade agreements were forged, cultural exchanges flourished, and alliances formed, creating a network of relationships that spanned galaxies. Yet, humanity never forgot the price of complacency. The scars of the war served as a constant reminder that vigilance was essential. Defense systems were upgraded, surveillance networks expanded, and contingency plans developed for every possible scenario. Earth stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with knowledge, experience, and an indomitable spirit. In the end, the message echoed across the stars, louder and clearer than ever before. This is what happens when you mess with humans.